His silent nephew tore up every bouquet, so the flower shop girl set down one paper daisy. Act 1, the first torn ribbon. The first bouquet came apart in Leo Bellandi's hands before anyone in Vale Flowers understood who he belonged to. White roses slid across the counter. Eucalyptus stems scattered over the tile. A satin ribbon, wide and expensive and too clean for grief, tore with a soft ripping sound that made every adult in the shop turn. Leo did not run. He did not shout. He stood beside the marble work counter with both hands full of broken ribbon, his small shoulders square, his dark hair falling over his forehead, his face calm in the frightening way children sometimes became calm when every grown person in the room had already stopped listening. Nora Vale saw him first because she had been wiring lilies in the back corner of the shop, where the refrigeration unit rattled and the radio lost signal whenever rain crossed the city. She was 29, Caucasian, chestnut-haired, and wearing a green canvas apron over a cream sweater with the sleeves pushed to her elbows. Her hands smelled of floral tape, wet stems, and coffee she had not finished. She saw the torn ribbon. Then she saw the boy's fingers. Not shaking. Not wild. Precise. He had not destroyed the whole bouquet. He had torn the ribbon, pulled out the white roses, and left the small blue forget-me-nots untouched near the center. That mattered. "Hey," said Dennis, the morning delivery driver, stepping toward the child. "Don't do that." Leo picked up a second bouquet. "Dennis," Nora said. He stopped because she used the voice she reserved for ladders, wet floors, and men who thought being louder made them useful. Leo tore the second ribbon. This one was black satin, wrapped around lilies and white tulips. The ribbon split neatly between his thumbs. He removed the tulips, dropped them on the counter, and left one stem of rosemary in place. The front bell rang. 2 men in black suits entered first. They did not look at the flowers. Men like that never looked at what was beautiful until beauty became tactical. One checked the front window, one checked the door to the workroom, and both looked at Leo with the alarm of people whose job had not included understanding him. Then Rafael Bellandi walked in. No one in Vale Flowers mistook him for a businessman. He was 41, clean-shaven, dark-haired, and dressed in a black three-piece suit beneath a long black overcoat that made the narrow flower shop feel smaller. A heavy signet ring sat on his right hand. His face was handsome in the severe way of old marble, all sharp jawline and controlled stillness, but his eyes moved quickly. They found Leo. Then the ruined flowers. Then Nora. "Leo," Rafael said. The boy did not look at him. The taller bodyguard crossed the room. "I have him." Nora stepped into his path. The bodyguard stopped so abruptly that a bucket of baby's breath swayed behind him. "Move," he said. "No." The word landed cleanly between the roses. Raphael's gaze sharpened. Nora did not look away from the bodyguard. "He is holding florist wire, torn ribbon, and 3 stems with cut ends. You rush him, he closes his hands." The man looked at Leo's hands, then at Raphael. "Back up," Raphael said. "Sir, he is damaging property." "Back up." The bodyguard obeyed, unhappy but controlled. Leo tore the third bouquet. This one had been placed in a white ceramic urn for the Bellandi Memorial Order, though Nora had not known it was Bellandi when she arranged it. Her aunt had written the card that morning and gone to the wholesale market before the clients arrived. The order called for 12 white rose bouquets, 6 lily urns, and 1 long table garland for a private memorial dinner. Leo pulled the white roses out again. He left the small wild daisies. Nora saw the pattern then. Raphael saw only the damage. "I will pay for everything," he said. Leo's hand tightened on the ribbon. Nora turned to Raphael. "Do not say that again." The shop went silent except for the refrigeration unit. The second bodyguard's hand twitched near his jacket. Nora pointed at him with floral shears. "Hands where I can see them." He stared at her. "This is a flower shop," she said. "Not a courtroom, not an alley, and not a room where a child becomes a problem because adults are embarrassed." Raphael looked at the shears, then at her face. "Your name?" he asked. "Nora Vale." "You own this place?" "My aunt does. I keep it from collapsing before noon. My nephew has ruined 3 arrangements." "No," Nora said. "He edited them." One of the bodyguards made a sound, then wisely turned it into a cough. Raphael's eyes darkened. "This is not a joke." "I agree." Leo picked up a 4th bouquet. Raphael moved 1 step. Nora raised 1 hand without touching him. "Stop." The fact that he stopped changed the room more than shouting would have. Rafael Bellandi looked like a man who had spent his life deciding when rooms ended. He had money enough to replace every flower in the shop, men enough to remove every obstacle, and fear enough around his name that most people would have apologized before he asked. Yet he stood still because a florist's assistant had told him to, and because his nephew had gone very quiet with torn ribbon between his fingers. Nora crossed to the work counter. Not toward Leo. That mattered too. She moved to the scrap bin beside the ribbon rack and took out a square of plain white packing paper. It was the cheap kind, thin enough to crease, strong enough to wrap a vase. She placed it on the counter, folded one corner to the center, then another, making each movement slow enough for the boy to track and boring enough that no adult could mistake it for a trick. Leo's fingers paused. Rafael saw it. Nora kept folding. The paper became a small daisy with 5 uneven petals and a pinched center. She did not decorate it. She did not offer it to Leo. She set it on the counter between the ruined bouquet and the untouched forget-me-nots, then stepped back. There, she said softly. Leo stared at the paper daisy. No one moved. Nora looked at the bodyguards first. Back another step. They looked at Rafael. Rafael nodded. They backed up. Nora looked at Dennis. Door sign to closed. But the morning pickup stash. Closed. Dennis flipped the sign. The flower shop became smaller, quieter, and less interested in witnesses. Leo set the 4th bouquet down without tearing it. He picked up the paper daisy, turned it once in his hand, then pushed it back toward Nora with 2 fingers. It was not speech. It was not a miracle. It was an answer. Rafael inhaled as if someone had struck him behind the ribs. Nora did not smile. Children often stopped trusting adults right after adults celebrated too loudly. She took another square of paper from the bin. Again, she asked. Leo tapped the torn white ribbon. Paper first, Nora said. Ribbon later. He looked at her for the first time. His eyes were gray like Raphael's, but softer, not weaker. Watching. Measuring. A child trying to decide whether an adult meant the rule or only the sound of it. Nora folded a second paper daisy. Raphael stood in the middle of the shop with rain on his black coat, power in both hands, and no idea what to do with either. Act 2, the flowers he left alone. Rafael Bellandi had seen rooms full of armed men become silent when he entered. He had watched judges swallow words, councilmen forget insults, and family captains lower their eyes because his father had taught him that a name survived only if the room knew what it cost to cross it. He had understood those rooms. They had rules, ugly but legible. Veil flowers made no sense to him. It was too bright. Too narrow. Too alive with scents that changed every few feet. Wet earth near the buckets. Lemon leaf near the sink. Roses, lilies, wax flower, paper, coffee, and the clean green snap of cut stems. Every surface carried color. Every bucket seemed breakable. His men looked ridiculous between the hydrangeas. And Leo, who had not spoken to him in 11 weeks, had just answered a florist's assistant by pushing paper across a counter. Rafael did not move because Nora Vale had told him not to move. That irritated him. It also steadied the room. Nora folded the second daisy more slowly than the first. Her hands were efficient, not delicate. Small scars crossed 2 knuckles. A strip of green floral tape clung to the back of her wrist. Her apron had a smear of pollen near one pocket and a pencil behind the other. She had the kind of beauty that did not ask to be noticed and therefore made noticing feel like discovery. He likes paper? Rafael asked. Leo's shoulders tightened. Nora glanced at Rafael, then back to the fold. No. Then what? He likes control that does not touch him. The sentence was so precise that Rafael had to do the work of not reacting. His sister's son had come to live with him after her death. Not immediately. First there had been relatives, lawyers, arguments, and one disastrous month with a cousin who believed expensive tutors could replace patience. Then Leo arrived at Rafael's house with 3 suitcases, a photograph he kept turned face down, and a silence that made every adult behave as if silence were an enemy they could surround. Rafael had hired speech specialists, child consultants, private teachers, a music coach, a woman who brought velvet cards with feelings printed on them, a man who believed eye contact could be earned through games. None had harmed Leo, but all had wanted something from him. A word. A nod. A sign that the adult had succeeded. Leo had given them nothing. Then, this morning, Rafael brought him to approve memorial flowers for his mother's private dinner because the family insisted the boy should be included. Rafael thought inclusion meant presents. Apparently, Leo had disagreed. Nora placed the second paper daisy beside the first. Leo did not reach for it. Instead, he picked up the torn white ribbon and laid it beside the 2 paper flowers, not across them. Beside them. Good, Nora said. Rafael's cousin Bianca, who had arrived 2 steps behind the guards and stayed near the door in a pale gray coat, finally found her voice. Good, she snapped. He destroyed hundreds of dollars in memorial flowers. Leo's fingers curled. Nora did not look at Bianca. No one asked you to make the room louder. Bianca blinked. Excuse me? No. Rafael's mouth nearly moved. Bianca looked at him, expecting correction. Rafael gave none. Rafael, she said, wounded. This is impossible. The dinner is tonight. The family expects white roses. Leo pushed one of the white roses off the counter. It dropped to the floor without drama. Nora looked at it, then at the intact wild daisies still in the torn arrangement. He does not. He is 8, Bianca said. He does not decide memorial florals. Leo picked up another white rose. Nora lifted one finger. He paused. You can move it, she said, but you cannot throw it. Rafael watched his nephew consider the rule. Leo placed the rose on the counter's far edge, away from the paper daisies. Nora nodded once. Thank you. Bianca made an impatient sound. Are we applauding table manners now? We are noticing communication, Nora said. He is making a mess. So did most of the adults before they learned how to use words. Dennis, by the door, turned his face toward the window. His shoulders shook once. Bianca's eyes narrowed. You are very bold for a shop girl. Floral assistant, Nora said. If you are going to insult my job, at least use the correct department. One guard coughed. Rafael looked at Nora. Do you always correct clients? Only when they are wrong near children. The answer struck harder than it should have. Rafael looked at Leo. The boy was not looking at him, but his hand had relaxed. He had stopped tearing flowers. He had arranged the white roses in a small rejected line and the wild daisies near the paper ones. What does it mean? Rafael asked. I do not know yet. But you know it means something. Nora met his eyes. Children do not usually take apart flowers by category because they enjoy invoices. You think he is sorting. I think he is objecting. To white roses. To whatever they stand for in this order. Bianca stepped forward. White roses stand for respect. Sometimes, Nora said. Sometimes they stand for adults choosing the safest grief because the true one is inconvenient. The shop went quiet. Rafael felt the sentence enter him slowly. His sister, Elena Bellandi, had hated white roses. She had called them funeral wallpaper. She liked wildflowers bought from corner stalls, yellow kitchen flowers, daisies from sidewalk cracks, anything that looked as if it had survived weather rather than a committee. He knew that. He had known that and still approved the order because Bianca sent the invoice. The family expected white, and he had been too tired to argue with people who used tradition like a locked door. Leo picked up a wild daisy and placed it beside the paper one. Rafael's throat tightened. Nora saw that too, damn her careful eyes. She did not soften toward him. She turned to Leo. More daisies, she asked. Leo tapped the counter twice. Paper or real? He tapped the paper daisy. Paper first, Nora said. He tapped the wild daisy. Real after. Leo looked at the torn white ribbon, then at the black ribbon on the lily urn. Nora followed his gaze. Rafael did too. The black ribbon around the lily urn had gold script printed along one edge. Bianca had ordered it, he remembered. Something formal. Something expensive. In loving memory of Elena Bellandi. Leo reached toward it. Rafael stepped forward without thinking. Nora turned so sharply that the movement stopped him. Do not, she said. He looked at her hand, raised between them. Not touching him. Not afraid of him. He is reaching for the ribbon, Rafael said. Yes. He may cut himself on the pin. Then tell me where the pin is instead of making him smaller. The words hit him in the center of the chest. What? Nora's voice stayed low. You keep trying to end the mess. He is trying to show you where it starts. That was the quiet turn before Rafael knew enough to name it. The room seemed to tilt away from all the things he could command. Money. Men. Apologies. Replacement flowers. A cleared shop. A frightened staff. None of them mattered if the boy at the counter was not making a scene but drawing a map. Rafael looked at the ribbon. The pin is at the back, he said. Good. Tell him. He stared at her. Nora stared back. Rafael turned to Leo. His voice felt too large, so he made it smaller. The pin is at the back of the ribbon. Leo's hand paused. If you want it off, Rafael continued, Nora can cut the tape. You do not have to pull. Leo looked at Nora. She picked up floral scissors, held them closed, and placed them on the counter where he could see. You point, she said. I cut. Leo pointed to the black ribbon. Nora cut the tape. The ribbon loosened from the urn and slid onto the counter. Leo picked it up carefully, turned it over, and pushed it toward Rafael. Rafael looked down. On the underside of the ribbon, hidden where no guest would see, a small paper tag had been stapled. Not a florist label. Not Nora's handwriting. Table centerpiece A. Client substitution approved by BM. Bianca Moretti. Not Bianca Bellandi. Bianca had signed under her married name, the name she used in society rooms where Bellandi grief became an opportunity to stand closer to power. Rafael lifted the tag. Bianca's face changed. Nora noticed that too. Act 3, The Wrong Flowers. No one spoke for several seconds after Rafael read the tag. The flower shop did not become dramatic. It became careful. Rain ticked against the front window. The cooler hummed. Somewhere in the workroom, a bucket settled against another bucket with a small plastic knock. Leo lined up paper daisies beside the wild ones, each paper flower turned at a slight angle, each real daisy placed below it like a translation. Rafael held the tag between two fingers. Explain, he said. He was looking at Bianca. Bianca lifted her chin. I adjusted the order. Why? Because the original list was inappropriate for a formal memorial. Whose memorial? Elena's. My sister. The families, Bianca said. The word families did what she meant it to do. It tried to make Rafael one opinion among many, tried to turn his sister's taste into a committee matter, tried to turn the boy at the counter into a child whose grief could be managed by adults who wore gray and ordered white roses. Nora opened the original order folder. Rafael looked at her. You have the first list? My aunt keeps everything because grief orders are expensive and people change their minds badly. Bianca stepped toward her. That is private. It is an invoice, Nora said. Not a diary. She pulled out a yellow carbon copy and placed it beside the torn ribbon. The original order had been written in an older hand, likely Raphael's, though he did not remember writing it. He recognized the requests. Wild daisies. Yellow freesia. Rosemary. Forget-me-nots. No white roses. No lilies. No black satin. Leo placed his small hand flat on the yellow copy. Raphael had to look away for 1 second. Only one. Nora let him have it without comment. Bianca did not. That was an emotional list, she said. It looked cheap. Leo moved the white roses farther away. Nora's expression did not change, but the temperature of her voice dropped. Careful. Bianca turned on her. You do not know this family. No, Nora said. But I know when someone calls a dead woman's preferences cheap in front of her child. Leo looked at Nora. Raphael saw it. It was not speech. It was better than speech because it was chosen. Bianca flushed. I meant the arrangements. Then say arrangements. Raphael, Bianca said, turning to him. This is ridiculous. The memorial is in 5 hours. I made the order dignified. You made it yours. I protected the family's image. From daisies? From looking provincial. Raphael's sister had grown up above a bakery, fought 3 cousins with a broom when she was 9, and once wore yellow flowers in her hair to a funeral because the widow hated black. She would have laughed at the word provincial, then used it as an insult for the furniture. Get out, Raphael said. Bianca blinked. Rafael. Leave the shop. You cannot be serious. You changed my sister's memorial flowers. You watched her son tear them apart and called it a mess. He needs discipline. Leo's fingers closed around the paper daisy. Nora stepped between Bianca and the counter again. Do not make him the problem because you got caught. Bianca looked at Raphael as if waiting for him to correct Nora. He did not. Carlo, he said to the taller bodyguard, walk Bianca to her car. Bianca's mouth parted. You would humiliate me in a flower shop? Raphael looked at the white roses on the floor. You chose the room. Carlo opened the door. Bianca left with the stiff dignity of a woman who believed dignity was posture rather than behavior. When the bell stopped trembling behind her, Leo placed the paper daisy on top of the yellow carbon copy. Nora exhaled softly. Now we know, she said. Raphael looked at the ruined arrangements. Can you fix them? No. The bluntness startled him. No. I can remake them. What is the difference? Fixing means pretending these were almost right. Remaking means admitting they were wrong. Raphael looked at her for a long moment. Remake them. I need your original list confirmed. I need payment for labor, not for Bianca's mistake. I need your guards to stop scaring Dennis. I need Leo to decide where the paper daisies go, if he wants to. And I need no one to say the word ruined again in the shop. Carlo, returning from the door, looked at Rafael with the expression of a man checking whether the sun had changed direction. Rafael asked, "Anything else?" "Coffee." "For whom?" "Me." The corner of his mouth moved. "Done." "Not from someone in a black SUV. From the bakery next door. Small, cream, no sugar." "You are specific." "So are memorial flowers." Rafael looked at Leo. "Do you want the paper daisies in the arrangements?" Leo did not answer. Nobody pushed. Nora took a shallow wooden tray from beneath the counter and placed it between the paper daisies and the real ones. "This can be for choices," she said. "Paper in the tray means yes. Paper on the counter means not yet. Paper in your hand means no." Leo watched her. She did not repeat it. Rafael noticed that too. Every expert he had hired repeated instructions as if repetition could become understanding by force. Nora gave the rule once and trusted the child to carry it. Leo placed one paper daisy in the tray. Then another. Then he placed the third in his hand and kept it. "Two yes," Nora said. "One no." Rafael did not ask why. That restraint cost him more than he expected. Nora saw the cost and nodded once, like he had done something small but correct. It should not have mattered. It did. For the next hour, the flower shop became a different kind of room. Dennis swept the white rose petals without making faces. Carlo brought coffee from the bakery and looked deeply uncomfortable holding a cardboard tray between the delphiniums. Rafael removed his overcoat and stood near the ribbon rack, not useful yet, but no longer blocking anyone's path. Nora rebuilt the first urn with daisies, rosemary, and forget-me-nots, then handed Leo a shallow bowl of paper squares. "Folded or flat?" she asked. Leo touched one flat square, then pointed to her hands. "Folded by me?" He tapped once. "Folded by you?" He tapped twice. Nora gave him a square. His first paper daisy had 3 petals and a corner that refused to stay down. Nora did not fix it. She placed it in the tray beside hers. Rafael had faced negotiations where millions turned on a sentence. He had sat through threats with less tension than he felt watching his nephew fold paper. Leo finished the second flower, then pushed it toward Rafael. The shop stopped pretending not to watch. Rafael looked at Nora. She shook her head slightly. No words. He understood. He took the paper daisy carefully, as if it were heavier than gold. "Thank you," he said. Leo looked at the flower in Rafael's hand. Then he looked away, but not before Rafael saw it. Act 4, Standing Close. By noon, Vale Flowers looked like a storm had apologized and then decided to help. White roses lay in reject buckets near the back door. Daisies filled every open surface. Rosemary bundles hung from the wire rack because Nora said their scent needed air. Yellow freesia arrived from a wholesaler who owed her aunt a favor and feared her aunt more than traffic. The long memorial garland had been stripped down to its base and rebuilt with wildflowers that looked less like a public statement and more like someone had remembered the woman. Rafael had never worked in a flower shop before. He discovered that stems were more complicated than knives. "Not like that," Nora said for the 4th time. He looked at the rosemary in his hand. "It is a plant. It is a brittle plant, and you are holding it like a confession." Carlo turned away fast. Rafael looked at him. "Do you need something?" "No, sir." "You are smiling." "No, sir." Nora reached across the counter and corrected Rafael's grip with 2 fingers against the rosemary stem. She did not seem to realize what the touch did to the room. Rafael did. Her fingers were cool from the water buckets. Her touch was practical, brief, and unconcerned with the fact that most people avoided touching him without permission. It was not careless. It was work. That made it worse. "Loose," she said. "You are not winning against it." "I win against most things." "How exhausting." Carlo made a sound into his coffee. Rafael almost smiled. "You find victory tiring?" "I find men who need every small task to surrender very tiring." "Do you correct all customers like this?" "Only the ones threatening herbs." Leo sat on a low stool near the counter with the wooden tray in front of him. He had folded 6 paper daisies. 2 were in the yes corner. 1 remained in his hand. 3 were lined along the tray's edge in a category Nora had not named, because she had learned enough not to name things too early. The boy had not spoken. No one had asked him to. Rafael stood close enough to see the paper folds, far enough not to shadow him. That distance felt unnatural. Every instinct told him to be closer, to guard, to correct the angle of the scissors, to stop the small mistake before it became frustration. Nora saw his hand move. "Wait," she said. Rafael stopped. He is about to choose. The fold is wrong. Maybe he wants it wrong. Why would he? Because it is his. Leo pressed the crooked petal down with his thumb and placed the daisy in the yes corner. Rafael let out a breath he had not meant to hold. Nora leaned her hip against the counter and looked at him. You see? I see that I do not understand flowers. Good start. That was not humility. It was adjacent. He looked at her then, really looked, and she did not step back. Pollen dusted one cheek. Her apron was streaked with green. A piece of paper clung to her sleeve. She had been bossing around a mafia boss for 2 hours and seemed mostly annoyed that he handled Rosemary poorly. Nora, he said. Yes? Teach me how to stand close without making him smaller. The shop softened around the question. Not because the danger vanished. Rafael Bellandi was still who he was. His men still stood by the door. His phone still vibrated with calls from relatives who had discovered Bianca had been sent away from a flower shop. The memorial still waited 5 hours ahead. But the question itself was different from every command he had given that morning. Nora considered him. Stand where he can see your shoes, she said. Rafael looked down. Not your face. Not your hands. Shoes. Children track distance low before they track expression high. He moved 2 inches back. More. He moved again. Now turn your body sideways. Why? Straight on adults look like walls. He turned. Hands? Visible. Empty if possible. Rafael put the rosemary down. Leo glanced at his shoes. Then at the tray. Do not celebrate that, Nora said. I was not. Your shoulders were. He almost denied it, but she would know. What else? He asked. Give 1 sentence, then wait. How long? Longer than you like. Carlo's face had become a study in restraint. Rafael ignored him and looked at Leo. 1 sentence. What sentence? He had spent 11 weeks surrounded by specialists who gave him scripts. Ask how he feels. Offer choices. Reflect language. Narrate the room. None of it had worked because every script sounded like an adult trying to unlock a door for their own relief. Rafael looked at the paper daisy in his hand. I remember your mother hated white roses, he said. Leo's fingers stopped. The room held. Rafael waited. Longer than he liked. Longer than pride liked. Longer than fear liked. Leo picked up the paper daisy he had kept in his hand and placed it beside the original yellow order copy. Nora's eyes lowered for 1 second. Rafael did not move. That is where it goes? He asked. Leo tapped once. Nora looked at Rafael and mouthed, good. The praise was tiny. He felt it anyway. By 1 o'clock, the replacement memorial order had a shape. 2 urns for the entry, built from rosemary, wild daisies, yellow freesia, and forget-me-nots. A table garland with paper daisies tucked into the greenery at Leo's chosen intervals. Smaller arrangements with no white roses, no lilies, no black satin. Torn white ribbon had been cut into short strips and tied around the paper daisies, not hidden, not dominant. A reminder that the wrong order had been taken apart before the right one could exist. Rafael picked up 1 strip. This stays? If Leo leaves it in the tray. It is torn. So was the morning. You make everything sound intentional. No. I make room for what already happened. That sentence stayed with him. Bianca's replacement, a cousin named Paolo, arrived at 1:20 with 3 family staff members and a face arranged for command. He took 1 look at the wildflowers and frowned. No, he said. Leo's hand closed around a paper square. Nora moved before Rafael did. She walked to the front of the counter and stood with floral scissors in 1 hand, not raised, not threatening, simply visible. Good afternoon, she said. Pickup is at 3. Paolo stared at her. These are not the approved flowers. Correct. The family approved white. The family made a mistake. And who decided that? Leo placed a paper daisy in the tray. Nora looked at it, then at Paolo. The person the memorial is for. Elena is dead. Rafael's voice came from behind Nora. Careful. Paolo saw him then and adjusted his tone. Rafael, I understand this morning has been emotional, but the family has standards. My sister had preferences. Preferences are not protocol. Today they are. Paolo's eyes moved from Rafael to Nora, then to Leo. You are letting a child and a shop girl dictate a Bellandi memorial? Leo's paper crumpled slightly. Nora's expression stayed calm. No. No? The child is communicating. The shop girl is translating. The uncle is deciding whether he loves accurately enough to listen. Carlo looked at the ceiling as if prayer might save him from reacting. Paolo flushed. Who do you think you are? The person holding your pickup slip. Rafael stepped beside Nora. Not in front. Beside. Paolo, he said, you will tell everyone the memorial flowers are being remade according to Elena's original order. They will object. Let them. They will say you are indulging the boy. Leo looked down. Rafael made himself wait until the boy could see his shoes. Then he said, they can say it to me. Leo looked at the paper daisy in Rafael's hand. Nora noticed. Of course she noticed. Paolo tried one more time. This will look informal. Rafael picked up the yellow order copy and held it out. It will look like my sister. That ended the argument. Act 5, the memorial that did not shrink him. The Bellandi memorial dinner was held in a private dining room above an old Italian restaurant near the river. Nora had not intended to attend. She planned to deliver the arrangements, check placement, collect the signed receipt, and return to Vale Flowers before her aunt discovered 3 invoices had been rewritten, 2 buckets had cracked, and Dennis had accidentally promised a bride that peonies were emotionally unreliable. Rafael changed that plan by standing beside the delivery van and saying, "Come inside." Nora looked at him over an armful of daisies. That sounded like an order. He stopped. She waited. Carlo, holding an urn the size of a small child, stared very hard at the restaurant awning. Rafael corrected himself. "Will you come inside?" "For placement." "For placement. Not for family politics. I would not wish that on anyone. You are related to them. Not by choice." She almost smiled. He saw it. That was becoming a problem. Inside, the room had been prepared with white linens, dark wood chairs, and long windows overlooking the rain-wet street. Without the flowers, it looked expensive and empty. With Bianca's original order, it would have looked like every formal grief money could buy. Nora and Dennis placed the wildflower garland along the center table. The paper daisies changed the room immediately. They were not perfect. That was the point. Some had uneven petals. Some leaned. One had a torn ribbon strip tied around the center because Leo had insisted, with a tap and a stare, that it belonged there. The real daisies and rosemary gave them context, making the paper flowers look less like craft and more like a language someone had finally decided to respect. Leo entered behind Rafael. He stopped at the doorway. Nora stepped back from the table, giving him a clear path without making the path feel like a test. "You can look from there," she said. Bianca, already seated near the far end in a black dress and wounded dignity, whispered something to Paolo. Nora did not hear the words, but she saw Leo's shoulders rise. Rafael saw them too. He turned his body sideways, hands visible. "You do not have to go in," he said. Leo looked at the garland. Then he walked to the table. No one applauded. Nora silently thanked every adult in the room for managing that much sense. Leo touched one paper daisy near the center, then moved it 3 inches to the left. He adjusted a sprig of rosemary. He removed one freesia stem and placed it beside a framed photograph of his mother. The photograph had been chosen by the family. Formal. Beautiful. Elena Bellandi in black silk, looking like someone else's idea of mourning. Leo looked at it for a long time. Then he took the paper daisy from his pocket, the one he had kept all morning, and set it against the frame. Rafael's face changed. Nora looked away because some moments needed privacy even in public rooms. Bianca did not. "That looks childish," she said. The sentence had barely entered the air before Rafael turned. Nora moved too, but he spoke first. "Good." Bianca blinked. "Excuse me?" "He is a child," Rafael said. "His grief is allowed to look like him." The room went quiet. Leo did not turn around, but his hand remained on the frame. Nora felt something in her chest loosen. Not because Rafael had defended the boy. She had expected him to learn that much. Because he had not done it with a threat. He had not made the room smaller to prove his protection. He had made the child's space larger. That was harder. Guests arrived in waves after that. Some hesitated at the wildflowers. Some whispered about the paper daisies. One elderly aunt touched the rosemary and began to cry silently, though Nora carefully pretended not to see. A cousin said Elena used to bring daisies to card games. A former driver laughed when he saw the yellow freesia and told Rafael that his sister had once bribed him with gas station flowers to teach her stick shift. The room began remembering the actual woman. Not the formal version. The real one. Nora stayed near the service door because the garland needed occasional correction and because Leo kept glancing toward her when adults leaned too close to the table. She never waved him over. She simply remained visible. Rafael came to stand beside her halfway through the dinner. You should eat, he said. I am working. You have said that before. It remains true. There is food. There is always food in rooms where service staff cannot sit. He looked at her. She realized too late that she had said more than she meant to. Nora. Do not buy the restaurant. His mouth closed. I saw the thought, she said. It was a small thought. It had a black car attached. Fine. If you want staff fed, ask the manager where they eat. He glanced toward the service corridor. And then? Then listen without threatening anyone. You remove many tools. I leave the useful ones. He considered that, then walked to the dining room manager, a nervous man with a silver tie. Nora watched their conversation from the doorway. Rafael kept his hands visible. He did not loom, though he did not know how not to look imposing. The manager pointed toward the service stairs. Rafael nodded, returned, and said nothing for a moment. They eat after midnight, he said. This is an early dinner. Yes. And the kitchen is sending plates downstairs now. Without threats? I used your name. That is not better. I said, the florist asked. Nora stared at him. Rafael looked almost pleased with himself. It worked. You are impossible. Adjacent to useful? Do not borrow my words for your own defense. His eyes warmed. Too late. Something passed between them, quiet and not at all safe. Nora had been aware of him all day, of course she had. A woman would have to be furniture not to be aware of Rafael Bellandi in a room. But awareness was one thing. Attraction was another, and attraction to a man who could turn any room with one sentence was a poor career strategy. She looked back at the table. Your nephew moved the freesia, she said. Rafael followed her gaze. Is that good? It is his. That is not an answer. It is the only answer that matters. Leo had placed yellow freesia around his mother's photograph in uneven arcs, like sunlight drawn by someone who trusted paper more than words. Several relatives had stopped criticizing the arrangement because other guests were now telling stories that made white roses seem absurd. Bianca left before dessert. No one stopped her. When the dinner ended, Rafael did not make a speech. He stood near the table and thanked everyone for remembering his sister as she had been. Then he looked at Leo. The paper daisies stay with the photograph, he said, unless you want them somewhere else. Leo looked at Nora. She shook her head once. Not my choice. Leo took one paper daisy from the garland and placed it in Rafael's hand. The room saw. Rafael looked down at it. For me? Leo tapped once. Rafael closed his fingers around the paper flower carefully. He did not cry. He did not pull the boy close. He did not ask for more. He simply said, thank you. Nora knew then that he had understood more than she expected. That, too, was becoming a problem. Act 6, paper first. Vale Flowers closed at 9 that night, though the lights stayed on past 10. Nora returned with Dennis and the empty delivery buckets, expecting her aunt to call, shout, praise, or all three in one breath. Instead, she found the shop quiet, the workroom swept, the ruined white roses gone, and a paper bag from the bakery on the counter with her name written on it. Small coffee. Cream. No sugar. Beside it sat a paper daisy folded from heavy cream stationery. Nora stared at it. Dennis leaned over her shoulder. That is either romantic or evidence. Go home. Can I tell your aunt? If you value your remaining piece, no. He grinned and left through the back. Nora picked up the paper daisy. It was terrible. Too many folds. One petal torn at the corner. The center crushed too tightly. It looked as if a dangerous man had tried to defeat office stationery by force and lost honorably. She smiled before she could stop herself. The front bell rang. Rafael stood outside the glass door in his black coat, no guards inside the shop. A black SUV waited at the curb, and Carlos sat in the driver's seat pretending not to watch. Nora unlocked the door but did not open it fully. We are closed. I know. Then this is trespassing with good manners. I brought coffee. You sent coffee. I brought an apology. She looked at the paper daisy in her hand. For the flower? For the first one. The others got worse. There were others? Carlo has been sworn to silence. She opened the door. Rafael stepped inside and removed his overcoat, not because he planned to stay, but because he had learned the shop did not like black wool dripping near the ranunculus. He hung it on the hook by the door without being told. Nora noticed. He noticed her noticing. Progress, he asked. Adjacent. His mouth curved. The shop looked different at night. Flowers became shapes first, colors second. The cooler hummed softly. Rain shone on the windows. The paper daisy between Nora's fingers seemed brighter than it had any right to be. "How is Leo?" she asked. "Asleep." "Good." With 3 paper daisies on his nightstand and 1 under his pillow. Nora's throat tightened. "He chose that?" "Yes." "Then good." Rafael stood near the work counter but did not cross into her space. He looked at me before bed. That sounds small to people who do not know better. It did not feel small. It wasn't. He looked at the scrap bin, the ribbon rack, the empty buckets waiting to be washed. "I wanted to thank you without buying anything you did not ask me to buy. That is a promising start. I also wanted to ask you to dinner." She should have expected it. She did not, because men like Rafael usually did not ask so directly. They arranged, summoned, invited in ways that left no clean path to refusal. He stood in a flower shop after closing, hands visible, expression controlled but not armored, and asked. "Dinner," Nora repeated. "Yes." "With guards?" "Not at the table." "Private room?" "No." "Expensive place where everyone stares?" "Your choice." "No buying the restaurant if the waiter annoys you." "You all keep making that rule. Maybe examine why." His almost smile came and went. "No buying the restaurant." "No asking me to fix Leo." The smile disappeared. "No. I mean it." "So do I. I can help with flowers, pacing, rooms, choices. I cannot become the place you put all your fear for him." Rafael absorbed that without defending himself. It made him more dangerous in a quieter way. "What can I ask?" he said. "Ask me to dinner." I did. "Then wait for the answer." He waited. Nora made him wait longer than necessary, partly because she needed to know he could, and partly because her heart had become foolish enough to enjoy his restraint. "Yes," she said finally. His relief was small but visible. "Tomorrow? Too soon." "Friday? I work late." "Saturday? Maybe." That is a cruel word. Useful one. "Saturday, maybe." "Saturday, maybe." He looked at the paper daisy in her hand. "May I have one lesson before I go?" "In folding?" "In not crushing it." She should have said no. It was late, she was tired, and his nearness did something to the air that made practical thoughts harder to hold. Instead, she took a square of packing paper from the scrap bin and placed it on the counter. "Paper first," she said. He stepped closer. Not too close. She demonstrated the first fold. He copied it badly. She corrected his hand by touching 2 fingers to the edge of the paper, not his skin. On the second fold, he waited for her nod before pressing down. "You are thinking of it as a command," she said. "Is folding not a sequence of commands? It is a sequence of invitations. To paper. To shape. You speak to flowers and paper as if they have opinions. They do. You are just used to louder refusals." He looked at her then, and the humor between them thinned into something warmer. "And you?" he asked. "I have many opinions." "I noticed." "Good. Will you tell me when I fold wrong?" "Always." "And when I stand too close?" "Yes." "And when I try to buy the chair?" "Especially then." The paper daisy took shape slowly. It was still crooked, still too tight at the center, but it was better than the one he had brought. Nora set it beside his first attempt. "There," she said. Less defeated. High praise. Earned. He looked at the 2 paper flowers. "Which one should I give Leo?" "Neither." That surprised him. "Why?" "You keep the bad one. Give him the one you learned to wait for." Rafael looked at her for a long moment. "That sounds like more than paper." "Most things are." The shop felt very quiet. Outside, Carlos shifted in the SUV and then very obviously looked away. Rafael saw, Nora saw Rafael see, neither mentioned it. "Nora," he said. "Yes? May I kiss you?" The question changed the room. It did not make it smaller. That was why she did not step back. She studied him, the dangerous man with careful hands, the uncle who had learned to stand sideways, the mafia boss who had been told no in a flower shop and returned with terrible paper flowers instead of punishment. "Not tonight," she said. Something flickered in his face, not anger. "Want," checked by respect. "All right. That easy?" "No." She smiled. He saw. "Saturday maybe," she said. His eyes warmed. "Saturday maybe." 3 months later, Vale Flowers kept a bowl of paper squares beside the register. No sign explained it. Nora disliked signs that turned care into performance. Regulars learned the bowl was for waiting hands, nervous children, grieving adults, brides who needed something to do before mothers arrived, and one mafia boss who came every Saturday at closing with coffee and folded terrible daisies until he improved. Rafael did improve. Slowly. He still pressed too hard when tired. He still wanted to fix a crease before understanding why it had formed. He still looked at Nora whenever Leo placed a flower somewhere unexpected, and she still gave him the same look back. Wait. Leo spoke eventually, but not because anyone demanded it, and not in a sudden miracle that made adults congratulate themselves. The first word came 6 weeks after the memorial, while he and Rafael sat at Nora's work counter folding paper. Rafael had crushed a petal and sighed like a man losing a war. Leo pushed a better fold toward him and said, very softly, loose. Rafael went still. Nora, behind the counter, did not cheer. She did not gasp. She did not make the word a trophy. She only said, good instruction. Leo returned to his paper. Rafael stared at the little daisy until his eyes shone with something he refused to let fall in front of the boy. Later, in the alley behind the shop, he stood with both hands braced on the brick wall and breathed like a man who had survived a room by not trying to own it. Nora stood beside him, not touching, close enough to be chosen. You did well, she said. I did nothing. Exactly. He laughed once, broken and quiet. You make restraint sound heroic. Sometimes it is. That night, he asked again if he could kiss her. She said yes. The kiss happened under the back awning while rain tapped the metal above them and the shop smelled of wet stems and paper. Rafael touched her cheek with the care of a man who understood that permission was not a door kicked open but a room entered with the lights on. Nora kissed him back with both hands on his coat, not because he needed holding back, but because she chose him with the same firmness she chose flower stems, ribbons, and rooms. He made a low sound against her mouth. She smiled. Too close, he asked. No. Too much? Not yet. Saturday maybe has improved. Do not get smug. Too late. She kissed him again for that, partly as reward, mostly as correction. The paper daisy from the first day stayed on the shelf behind the counter, flattened a little by time, its uneven petals held together with a torn strip of white bouquet ribbon. Leo had placed it there himself, in the category that meant yes. Customers sometimes asked whether it was for sale. Nora always said no. Rafael once asked what price she would put on it if she had to. Nora looked at the daisy, then at the man who had learned to stand sideways, wait longer than pride liked, and ask before turning one into action. More than you can afford, she said. He accepted that without offense. Progress. On the first anniversary of Elena Bellandi's memorial, Leo came into Vale Flowers carrying a small box of paper daisies he had folded himself. Some were crooked. Some were nearly perfect. One was made from a corner of Raphael's old meeting notes, black ink still visible along the petal. Nora placed them in a tray and asked, paper first? Leo shook his head. He took one real daisy from the bucket, set it beside the paper ones, and looked at Rafael. Both, he said. Rafael closed his eyes for 1 second. Only one. Then he opened them and looked at Nora. She nodded. Both. Paper and real. Silence and words. Grief and dinner. Power and patience. A torn ribbon and a flower someone made by hand because the room had finally become quiet enough to notice what a child had been saying all along. Rafael picked up the worst paper daisy in the box. This one is mine, he said. Leo almost smiled. Nora saw it. She did not celebrate too loudly. She only reached for another square of packing paper and placed it on the counter between them. Again, she asked. Leo tapped once. Rafael tapped once too, a grown man learning the language of a child without stealing it. Nora folded the first corner. Paper first. Then real. And in the bright little flower shop where one ruined bouquet had become a map, the most dangerous man in Chicago waited for the next fold.